The stagecoach lurched to a halt outside the dusty depot in Las Lunas, New Mexico. And Olivia Preston knew that whatever awaited her beyond those creaking doors would determine the rest of her life. She pressed her gloved hand against the worn wooden seat, steadying herself as the driver shouted something incomprehensible above the desert wind. And beside her, her mother Dorothy touched her arm with trembling fingers that spoke of both courage and fear. "We are here, Mama," Olivia said softly, looking into her mother's lined face, noting how the harsh sunlight streaming through the window caught the silver in her hair. "This is our new beginning." Dorothy Preston, at 68 years old, had never imagined she would travel across half the country to watch her daughter marry a stranger. Yet here they were in this sun-baked territory, far from the green hills of Pennsylvania, where they had buried Olivia's father just 1 year prior. The consumption had taken him slowly, and the debts he left behind had taken everything else even faster. Olivia gathered her skirts and accepted the driver's weathered hand as he helped her down. The heat struck her immediately, a dry, pressing warmth so different from the humid summers back home. She was 24 years old, with auburn hair pinned beneath a modest traveling bonnet, and green eyes that had learned to hide worry behind determination. Her dress, though clean and carefully mended, showed its age in the way the fabric had faded from deep blue to something closer to the color of distant mountains. She turned to help her mother, whose joints protested the movement after 3 weeks of travel. Dorothy's breathing came shallow and quick, the weakness in her lungs a concern that kept Olivia awake most nights. The doctor in Philadelphia had said fresh air might help, though he had also said many things that amounted to giving her mother perhaps a year, perhaps 5. No one could know for certain. The depot was a simple structure of adobe and weathered wood, and standing beside it was a man who could only be Roland Wells. Olivia recognized him from the single photograph he had sent, though the image had not captured the breadth of his shoulders, or the way he stood with the easy confidence of someone who belonged to this land. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of aged whiskey. His face was sun-weathered and honest, not handsome in any refined way, but strong and real. He removed his hat as they approached, revealing the pale line across his forehead where the sun had not reached. "Miss Preston," he said, his voice a low rumble that carried easily despite its quietness. "I am Roland Wells. Welcome to Las Lunas." "Mr. Wells," Olivia replied, extending her hand. His grip was firm but careful, the hand of a man who knew his own strength. "Thank you for meeting us. This is my mother, Dorothy Preston." She watched his expression carefully for any sign of displeasure or surprise. Her letters had mentioned her mother, but she knew well that the reality of taking in an elderly woman was far different from words on paper. Some men might have balked, might have felt deceived, might have turned them away right there at the depot. Roland Wells turned to her mother and his entire demeanor softened. "Madam," he said gently, "it is an honor. The journey must have been difficult." Dorothy studied him with the shrewd gaze of someone who had lived through much and learned to read people quickly. "It was long, Mr. Wells, but we are grateful to be here. I hope my presence is not an inconvenience." Something flickered in his eyes, and when he spoke, Olivia heard genuine warmth. "My house has room for love, Mrs. Preston. Any family of Olivia's is family of mine." The words, simple as they were, struck something deep in Olivia's chest. She had spent the entire journey bracing herself for rejection, for anger, for a marriage built on resentment before it even began. Instead, here was this cowboy, this stranger who was to be her husband, speaking of love and family as though they were already his to claim. "I have a wagon just here," Roland continued, gesturing to a sturdy vehicle with 2 horses waiting patiently in their traces. "The ranch is about 5 miles north. Not too far, but I thought you might appreciate the rest before we have the ceremony." "Ceremony?" Olivia asked, surprised. "Well, yes," Roland said, and for the first time she saw uncertainty cross his features. "I thought we might marry tomorrow, give you time to settle in first. Unless you would prefer to wait longer, of course. Or if you would rather have it done today, we could do that too. The padre said he would be available whenever we needed him." Olivia glanced at her mother, who gave her a small, encouraging nod. "Tomorrow would be fine," she said. "Thank you for being considerate." Roland loaded their modest collection of trunks and bags into the wagon bed with easy strength, then helped both women onto the bench seat. He took the reins and guided the horses away from the depot, through the small town of Las Lunas. Olivia observed everything with hungry eyes, this place that would be her home. Adobe buildings lined the dusty main street, their thick walls promising coolness inside. A few shops, a saloon, a church with a bell tower that caught the afternoon sun. People moved about their business, some pausing to wave at Roland, their curious gazes following the 2 women beside him. "The town is small," Roland said, "but folks are good. We help each other when needed. My ranch supplies beef to some of the nearby settlements and to the mining camps up in the mountains. It is honest work, and there is enough to live comfortably." "You manage it alone?" Olivia asked. "I have 2 hands who work for me. Miguel has been with me for 6 years, and his brother Tomas joined us 3 years back. Good men, both of them. They have a small cabin on the south edge of the property." He paused, then added, "I built the main house 2 years ago, thinking it was too big for just me. I am glad now that I made it spacious." Dorothy coughed softly into her handkerchief, and Olivia saw Roland's eyes flicker with concern. "Is there a doctor in town?" Olivia asked quietly. "Yes, Dr. Samuel Harrison. He is skilled and makes house calls. If your mother needs anything, we will get him out to the ranch." "Thank you," Olivia said, and meant it. The landscape opened up as they left the town behind, vast stretches of pale earth dotted with scrub brush and distant mountains that rose like ancient sentinels against the endless blue sky. The air smelled of dust and sage and something else Olivia could not name, something wild and untamed. The horses moved steadily, their hooves raising small clouds with each step. "It is very different from Pennsylvania," Dorothy observed. "I imagine it is," Roland agreed. "Is it too harsh?" "Too empty? No," Dorothy said thoughtfully. "It is simply different. There is a beauty to it, though it takes some seeing." Roland turned to look at her with something approaching approval. "That is exactly right, madam. Most folks do not see it at first, but it is there if you look." They rode in companionable silence for a while, Olivia acutely aware of Roland's presence beside her, the easy way he handled the reins, the solid reality of him. She had spent so many weeks imagining this meeting, this man, building him into either a monster or a saint in her mind depending on her mood. The reality was something altogether more complex and more comforting. He was just a man, flawed and human, but seemingly kind. The ranch appeared gradually, first as a distant structure that gained detail as they approached. The main house was indeed large, built of wood with a deep porch that wrapped around 2 sides. Nearby stood a barn, a stable, and several other outbuildings. A windmill turned lazily in the breeze, and Olivia could see cattle grazing in the distance, dark shapes against the pale ground. "It is beautiful," she said honestly. Roland pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house and set the brake. "I hope you will think so after you have seen the inside. I'm not much for decorating, I am afraid. The place is clean but plain." He helped them down and carried their belongings inside. The front door opened into a large main room with a stone fireplace on one wall and windows that let in generous light. The furniture was simple but well made: a table with chairs, a sofa, a few other pieces that spoke of function rather than fashion. The kitchen area occupied one end of the room with a cast iron stove and sturdy cabinets. "There are 3 bedrooms," Roland said, setting down the trunks. "The largest is back this way." He led them down a short hallway and opened a door to reveal a spacious room with a large bed, a wardrobe, and a window that looked out over the ranch. "I thought you might want to share for now, until you are more comfortable. Or if you prefer separate rooms, I can take one of the smaller ones." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. The presumption had been that they would marry and share a bed as husband and wife, but his consideration touched her. "We can share, Mr. Wells, once we are married." "Roland," he said. "Please call me Roland, and I will call you Olivia if that is acceptable." "Yes, of course. There is another room here for your mother," he continued, opening the next door to show a slightly smaller but equally pleasant space. "I put fresh linens on the bed this morning, and there is a washstand with clean water." Dorothy moved into the room slowly, running her hand over the simple quilt that covered the bed. "This is lovely, Mr. Wells, more than I expected." "Roland, madam, and you are welcome here for as long as you wish to stay." After he left them to freshen up and rest, Olivia helped her mother sit on the bed and knelt to remove her traveling boots. "What do you think, Mama?" she asked softly. Dorothy reached out and cupped her daughter's face with one weathered hand. "I think he is a good man, Olivia. I think we were very fortunate." "I was so afraid," Olivia admitted. "Afraid he would be cruel or cold, or that he would resent you being here." "I know, my dear, but look around this house. He prepared a place for me without even knowing if I would be difficult or pleasant, sick or well. That speaks to his character." Olivia rested her head against her mother's knee for just a moment, allowing herself to feel the relief that had been building since Roland first spoke those words about his house having room for love. Perhaps this would work. Perhaps she could build something real here in this strange, beautiful land. That evening, Roland prepared a meal for them, apologizing for his limited cooking skills as he set out beef stew and fresh bread that he admitted he had bought from a neighbor. They ate together at the large table, and conversation came easier than Olivia had anticipated. Roland asked about their journey, about Pennsylvania, about Olivia's father. She found herself telling him things she had not planned to share so soon about her father's kindness, his love of books, the way he had tried so hard to provide for them even as the sickness took his strength. "He sounds like a man worth knowing," Roland said. "He was," Dorothy agreed quietly. "My daughter is very much like him." Roland looked at Olivia then, really looked at her, and she saw something warm in his gaze. "Then I am lucky indeed." After dinner, Roland showed them the rest of the property in the fading light. The barn housed several horses and the milk cow, all in clean stalls with fresh hay. The chickens were already roosting for the night, soft shapes in the dimness of their coop. Everything spoke of good management, of a man who took pride in his work and his home. "Miguel and Tomas will be back day after tomorrow," Roland explained as they walked slowly back toward the house, matching his pace to Dorothy's slower gait. "They are driving a herd to Fort Stanton. I would have gone with them, but I wanted to be here when you arrived." "I appreciate that," Olivia said. He stopped walking and turned to face her fully. The last light of sunset painted everything gold and red, and his expression was serious. "Olivia, I want you to know something. I understand that this arrangement is not what most women dream of. You do not know me, and I do not know you, not really. But I promise you that I will do everything in my power to be a good husband. I will provide for you and your mother. I will treat you with respect, and I will try my best to make you happy." The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. "Roland, I will do the same. I will try to be a good wife to help build a home here to make this marriage work." "That is all either of us can promise," he said gently. "The rest will come with time or it will not, but we will try." Dorothy, standing a few feet away, coughed again, harder this time, and both of them turned to her with concern. "I am fine," she insisted when she caught her breath. "Just tired. It has been a long day." They returned to the house, and Roland showed them where things were kept, how to work the stove, where the well was located. He was patient with every question, never making them feel foolish for not knowing. When it was fully dark, he excused himself to one of the smaller bedrooms, giving them privacy and space. Olivia lay awake long into the night, listening to her mother's uneven breathing in the next room, thinking about the man who would be her husband in less than 24 hours. She had expected many things from this arrangement, but not kindness, not genuine warmth. The world had taught her to expect less, to brace for disappointment. Roland Wells was proving to be something unexpected, and she found herself hoping, cautiously, that perhaps this strange beginning might lead somewhere good. Morning came bright and clear, the sun turning the landscape into something almost otherworldly in its intensity. Olivia rose early and found Roland already in the kitchen, building up the fire in the stove. He looked up when she entered, his hair damp as though he had just washed, and offered a small smile. "Good morning," he said. "I was going to make coffee. Would you like some?" "Let me do it," Olivia offered, "and I can make breakfast as well. You have done enough." He stepped aside but did not leave, instead leaning against the counter and watching as she worked. "I have been thinking," he said after a moment. "If you would like to wait longer before the wedding, we can." "I do not want you to feel rushed." Olivia measured coffee into the pot and set it on the stove before turning to face him. "Do you want to wait?" "No," he said honestly, "but this is as much your choice as mine. Then we will marry today as planned." Something like relief crossed his features. "All right then." They married that afternoon in the small church in Las Lunas, with Dorothy and the Padre's housekeeper as witnesses. Olivia wore her best dress, a green cotton that brought out her eyes, and Roland had cleaned up in a fresh shirt and vest. The ceremony was simple and brief, but when Roland took her hand and spoke his vows, his voice was steady and sure. When it was her turn, Olivia found that the promises came easier than she had expected. To honor and cherish seemed less daunting when directed at this man who had shown her nothing but kindness. The Padre pronounced them married, and Roland leaned in carefully, giving her time to pull away if she wished, before pressing a gentle kiss to her lips. It was brief and chaste, but Olivia felt the warmth of it all the way through her body. Outside the church, a few townspeople had gathered, curious about the newcomer who had captured their local bachelor. An older woman with a kind face approached them, introducing herself as Maria Sanchez. "I live just down the road from your ranch," she said in accented English. "If you need anything, you come see me, yes. I teach you how to cook for a working man, how to make do in this heat." "Thank you," Olivia said warmly. "I would appreciate that very much." A younger man with a star pinned to his vest shook Roland's hand. "Congratulations, Roland. About time you settled down." "Thank you, Sheriff Martinez," Roland replied, and Olivia noted the easy friendship between the two men. They returned to the ranch in the late afternoon, and Roland carried Dorothy inside despite her protests that she could walk perfectly well. "Save your strength, madam," he said gently. "No use spending it when you do not have to." He set her carefully in the comfortable chair by the fireplace and brought her water. Olivia watched the interaction with growing warmth in her chest. Her mother had been right. They had been very fortunate indeed. That night, after Dorothy had retired to her room, Olivia stood in the bedroom she would now share with Roland, suddenly uncertain. She had changed into her nightgown behind the screen, brushed out her long auburn hair, and now did not know what to do with her hands or where to look. The reality of being married, of sharing a room and a bed with this man who was still largely a stranger, settled over her like a heavy blanket. Roland entered quietly, pausing when he saw her. "Olivia," he said gently, "I want you to know that I have no expectations tonight. We can take as much time as you need. We are married," she said, her voice coming out smaller than she intended. "You have every right." He crossed the room to her but did not touch her, instead waiting until she met his eyes. "I have rights, yes, but I will not exercise them until you are ready. This has been an overwhelming few days. I do not want you to feel rushed or afraid." The consideration undid something tight in her chest. "I am not afraid," she said, and realized it was true. "Perhaps nervous, but not afraid, not of you." "Then we will go slowly," he said. "And if at any point you want to stop, we stop." "Yes, yes," she whispered. He reached out then slowly and cupped her face with one calloused hand. His touch was gentle, reverent almost, and when he kissed her this time it was deeper than the brief press of lips at the church. Olivia felt herself responding, leaning into the warmth of him, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. She could feel his heart beating strong and steady beneath her palm. They moved to the bed and he continued to be gentle, patient, guiding her through something that was both strange and natural. There was some discomfort, but his attention to her needs, his careful watching of her expressions, made it bearable, and then, gradually, something more. Afterward he held her close, her head resting on his chest, his hand stroking her hair in a gesture that felt both protective and tender. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she said, and it was true. "More than all right." She felt him press a kiss to the top of her head and allowed herself to relax into his embrace. This was her husband now, this man who had shown her nothing but kindness and care. Perhaps love would come in time. The foundation for it certainly seemed to be forming, stone by careful stone. The following weeks fell into a rhythm that surprised Olivia with its comfort. She woke each morning to find Roland already up and working, tending to the ranch with Miguel and Tomas, who had returned and greeted her with friendly respect. She spent her days learning to manage the house, to cook for working men with hearty appetites, to tend the garden that Roland helped her plant near the kitchen door. Dorothy's health remained stable, neither improving nor worsening significantly. She spent her mornings in the chair by the window, mending clothes or knitting, and in the afternoons, she would walk slowly around the property with Olivia, growing stronger in small increments. The dry air seemed to help her breathing, just as the Philadelphia doctor had suggested it might. Maria Sanchez proved to be a godsend, visiting often and teaching Olivia the practical skills she needed. How to make tortillas, how to preserve meat in the heat, how to coax vegetables from the stubborn soil. The older woman never made her feel foolish for not knowing, instead treating each lesson as an opportunity for friendship. Roland continued to be attentive and kind, though Olivia noticed he worked himself hard, often coming in after dark with exhaustion clear on his face. She learned to have dinner waiting, water heated for washing, small comforts that she could provide. In return, he brought her wildflowers he found on the range, fixed anything that broke without being asked, and sat with Dorothy in the evenings, playing cards or simply talking. One evening about a month after their arrival, Olivia stood at the stove stirring stew when she felt Roland come up behind her. His arms wrapped around her waist and he rested his chin on her shoulder, a gesture that had become familiar and welcome. "This smells good," he murmured. "Maria's recipe," Olivia admitted. She says I am improving. You are doing wonderfully." He pressed a kiss to her neck and she shivered pleasantly. "I am lucky to have you." She turned in his arms to face him, reaching up to touch his face. The feelings that had been growing in her chest for weeks now pressed for acknowledgement. "Roland," she said softly, "I think I am falling in love with you." His eyes widened slightly, then softened with unmistakable emotion. "Olivia," he said, his voice rough, "I have been in love with you for weeks. I was just waiting for you to catch up." She laughed, surprised by the joy that bubbled up in her, and pulled him down for a kiss that quickly deepened. The stew continued to bubble on the stove, forgotten for the moment as they held each other in the dimming light of the kitchen. From the main room, Dorothy's voice called out, "If you two let that dinner burn, you will both be very disappointed." They broke apart, laughing, and Olivia turned back to the stove while Roland went to set the table. The ease between them, the comfort and growing affection, felt like the most natural thing in the world. But peace, Olivia was learning, was often temporary in this wild land. 2 days later, Roland rode out with Miguel and Tomas to check on the herd in the north pasture and did not return by nightfall. Olivia tried not to worry at first, telling herself that ranch work often ran late, that there could be 100 innocent reasons for the delay. But as full dark settled and still there was no sign of him, fear began to gnaw at her stomach. Dorothy, seeing her distress, tried to be reassuring. "He is a capable man, Olivia. He knows this land." "I know," Olivia said, but she could not settle, moving from window to window, peering out into the darkness. It was nearly midnight when she finally heard the sound of horses approaching. She rushed to the door and flung it open to see Miguel helping Roland down from his horse. Even in the dim light from the house, she could see the dark stain spreading across Roland's shirt. "What happened?" she demanded, rushing forward to take his other side. "Rustlers," Miguel said grimly. "They tried to take some of the herd. There was shooting." They got Roland inside and into a chair. Olivia's hands shook as she unbuttoned his shirt to reveal a deep gash across his ribs where a bullet had grazed him. It was bleeding steadily but did not look like it had hit anything vital. "I am fine," Roland said, though his face was pale. "It looks worse than it is." "Tomas went to fetch Dr. Harrison," Miguel said. "He should be here soon." Olivia forced herself to be calm and practical. She had nursed her father through his long illness and knew something of caring for the injured. She fetched clean cloth and hot water, cleaning the wound as gently as she could while Roland hissed in pain but did not pull away. "What happened to the rustlers?" she asked, focusing on the task to keep her fear at bay. "They ran off when we returned fire," Roland said. "But they will likely try again. This is not the first time we have had trouble with that particular group." Dr. Harrison arrived within the hour, a middle-aged man with steady hands and a calm demeanor. He examined the wound, declared it serious but not life-threatening, and stitched it closed while Roland gritted his teeth and gripped the arms of the chair. Olivia stood beside him, holding his hand, offering what comfort she could. "You were lucky," Dr. Harrison said as he finished bandaging the wound. "A few inches to the left and we would be having a very different conversation. No heavy lifting for at least 2 weeks and keep it clean and dry." After the doctor left, Olivia helped Roland to bed despite his protests that he was fine. She removed his boots and helped him lie back carefully, mindful of his injury. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "I know this is not what you signed up for." Olivia looked at him in surprise. "Roland, I am your wife. Do you think I would care for you any less because you were hurt protecting what is ours? Some women might. Then they would be fools." She sat on the edge of the bed and took his hand. "When I married you, I promised to stand by you. That does not change just because things get difficult." He pulled her down gently and kissed her, slow and deep despite his obvious exhaustion. "I love you," he said against her lips. "I love you too," she whispered back, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The next few days were difficult. Roland chafed at being confined to the house, frustrated by his inability to work. Olivia did her best to keep him comfortable and occupied, while also managing the household and helping Miguel and Tomas coordinate the ranch work. It was exhausting, but she found strength she had not known she possessed. Dorothy proved surprisingly helpful, taking over some of the lighter household tasks and sitting with Roland when Olivia needed to be elsewhere. Olivia often came back to find them deep in conversation or playing cards, her mother's laughter mixing with Roland's deeper chuckle. One afternoon, about a week after the shooting, Sheriff Martinez rode out to the ranch with news. "We caught 2 of the rustlers," he told them, accepting the coffee Olivia offered. "They are in custody and talking. Seems there is a bigger operation running stolen cattle up through the territory. We are working with marshals from Santa Fe to shut it down." "That is good news," Roland said from his seat at the table, where Olivia had insisted he remain despite his desire to be up and moving. "It is," the sheriff agreed. "But you should be careful until we have them all rounded up. They are not above retaliation." After the sheriff left, Roland was quiet, his expression troubled. Olivia sat beside him and took his hand. "What are you thinking?" "I am thinking about you and your mother," he said bluntly. "If something had happened to me, if I had been killed, what would you have done?" The question startled her. "Roland, do not talk like that. No, I need to say this." He turned to face her fully. "I have made arrangements with my lawyer in town. If anything happens to me, everything goes to you. The ranch, the accounts, all of it. Miguel and Tomas know to take their orders from you. You would not be left destitute." Tears pricked Olivia's eyes. "I do not want to think about losing you. And I do not want to think about leaving you," he said gently. "But this is a hard land, Olivia. Things happen. I needed you to know that you would be taken care of." She leaned forward and rested her forehead against his. "Then you need to know the same. I would not just survive, Roland. I would continue what you built. I would honor your memory by living fully and well. But I would much prefer to do it with you beside me." He smiled slightly. "Then I guess I had better heal up and stick around." "Yes," she said firmly. "You had better." As the days passed, Roland's wound healed cleanly with no signs of infection. By the end of the 2nd week, he was moving more easily, though still tender. Dr. Harrison pronounced himself satisfied with the progress and cleared Roland to return to light work. The threat of the rustlers faded as the sheriff and the marshals rounded up the gang, culminating in a tense standoff at an abandoned line shack 30 miles north. No one from Las Lunas was hurt, and the stolen cattle were recovered and returned to their rightful owners. Roland got back about a dozen head that had been taken, and life slowly returned to normal, but something had shifted in the dynamics of the household. Olivia was no longer the uncertain mail-order bride trying to find her place. She had proven herself capable and strong, had managed the ranch in Roland's absence, had tended his injury without flinching. Roland looked at her with new respect and even deeper love, and she felt the same toward him. He had shown vulnerability, had trusted her with his fears and his future. The bond between them had been tested and had emerged stronger. Dorothy's health continued to hold steady through the hot summer months. She spent her days in contented occupation, helping where she could but mostly just enjoying the peace of the ranch. Olivia often found her sitting on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the mountains, a small smile on her face. "Are you happy here, Mama?" Olivia asked one such evening, settling into the chair beside her. "I am," Dorothy said simply. "More than I thought I would be." "Your father would have liked Roland. You think so, I know so. He is a good man, Olivia, and he loves you very much. I love him too, Olivia said, the words coming easily now. I did not expect it to happen so quickly, but it did. Love is like that sometimes, Dorothy said wisely. It does not always follow a schedule. As autumn approached, bringing cooler temperatures and relief from the intense summer heat, Olivia realized her monthly courses were late. She said nothing at first, not wanting to raise hopes prematurely, but when another week passed and then another, she allowed herself to acknowledge what her body was telling her. She was pregnant. The realization filled her with a complex mix of emotions. Joy, certainly, but also fear. Her mother's difficult births were well-known family history, and Olivia had always wondered if she would face the same struggles. But beneath the fear was a deep excitement at the thought of bringing Roland's child into the world, of building their family. She waited until they were alone in their bedroom one night to tell him. Roland was already in bed, reading by lamplight, and looked up with a smile when she entered. "You have been quiet tonight," he observed. "Is something wrong?" "No," she said, crossing to sit beside him. "Nothing is wrong. In fact, something is very right." He set aside his book, giving her his full attention. "All right, you have my curiosity." She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby, Roland." For a moment he simply stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then slowly, wonder spread across his face. "A baby," he repeated. "Olivia, are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without seeing a doctor. But yes, I am sure." He pulled her to him carefully, holding her as though she were made of glass. "This is the best news," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "The absolute best news." She felt tears slip down her cheeks, happy tears this time. "You are pleased?" "Pleased, Olivia, I am overjoyed." He pulled back to look at her, his hands framing her face. "We are going to be parents." "Yes," she said, laughing through her tears. "We are." They told Dorothy the next morning, and the older woman's face lit up with delight. "A grandchild," she breathed. "Oh, my dears, I am so happy for you." "You will help, will you not, Mama?" Olivia asked, suddenly needing that reassurance. "Every step of the way," Dorothy promised. "Though from what I can see, you will do just fine. You are strong, Olivia, stronger than you know." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the fall and into winter. Olivia experienced some nausea in the early months, but nothing debilitating. Roland became even more protective, insisting she rest more, lifting nothing heavy, hovering until she had to shoo him away with affectionate exasperation. "I am pregnant, not made of porcelain," she told him one afternoon when he tried to prevent her from carrying a basket of laundry. "I know," he said, taking the basket anyway. "But humor me, all right. You are carrying the most precious thing in my world." How could she argue with that? Maria Sanchez was thrilled when she heard the news and immediately began knitting tiny clothes and blankets. "I make enough for 3 babies," she declared. "You will have everything you need." As winter settled over New Mexico, bringing cold nights and occasional dustings of snow, the house felt warm and full of anticipation. Roland spent his evenings working on a cradle in the barn, crafting it from smooth pine with careful attention to every detail. Olivia would find him out there sometimes, sanding the wood to satin smoothness, his expression distant and content. "What are you thinking about?" she asked one such evening, wrapped in a shawl against the cold. "About being a father," he admitted. "About whether I will be any good at it." "You will be wonderful," she said with absolute certainty. "Look at how you care for Mama and me. Look at how patient you are, how kind. Our child will be lucky to have you." He stood and pulled her into his arms, mindful of her growing belly. "I hope so," he said quietly. "I want to give our children everything. Love, security, a good home. Children," she teased, "already planning for more than one." "Well," he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "If this one goes well, maybe we will have a whole houseful." The thought made her laugh. "Let us get through this first one before we start planning a houseful." Christmas came, and they celebrated simply but joyfully. Roland had ridden into town and returned with gifts: a warm shawl for Olivia, a pair of soft slippers for Dorothy, and materials for more baby clothes. Olivia had made him a new shirt, painstakingly stitching every seam, and knitted thick socks for the cold mornings. Dorothy had contributed a beautiful embroidered pillowcase set for their bed. They attended Christmas Mass in Las Lunas, and afterward, several families invited them for dinner. They ended up at Maria Sanchez's home, crowded around a table laden with food, surrounded by laughter and warmth. Olivia looked around at the friendly faces, at Roland beside her with his hand resting protectively on her belly, at her mother chatting animatedly with Maria, and felt a profound sense of belonging. This was home. These were their people. They had found their place. Winter gave way to early spring, and Olivia's belly grew round and prominent. She felt the baby move for the first time in February, a flutter like butterfly wings that made her gasp and call for Roland. He pressed his hand to her stomach, waiting patiently until he felt the movement himself, his face transforming with awe. "That is our baby," he said wonderingly. "That is our child." "Yes," she whispered, "our child." As her due date approached in late April, Dr. Harrison began making more frequent visits, checking on her progress and pronouncing himself satisfied. "Everything looks good," he told them. "The baby is positioned well and you are healthy. I see no reason why this should not go smoothly." Despite his reassurances, Olivia felt anxiety building as the time drew near. Labor and childbirth were dangerous even in the best circumstances, and she had heard too many stories of women who did not survive. But she tried to keep her fears to herself, not wanting to worry Roland or her mother. Dorothy, however, saw through her brave face. One afternoon, as Olivia sat mending tiny clothes, her mother sat beside her and took her hand. "You are afraid," she said gently. "Yes," Olivia admitted. "Is that foolish?" "Not at all. Every woman feels some fear before her first child." "But Olivia, you are strong. You have faced so much already and come through it. You will face this too, and on the other side will be your baby, yours and Roland's." "Will you stay with me?" Olivia asked. "During the birth." "Wild horses could not drag me away," Dorothy promised. Labor began on a warm spring morning, gentle cramps that gradually intensified as the day wore on. Olivia told Roland, who immediately rode for Dr. Harrison despite her protests that it was too soon. By the time they returned, the contractions were coming regularly, and Olivia had retreated to the bedroom with Dorothy at her side. The labor lasted through the day and into the night, long hours of increasing pain that tested Olivia's endurance. Roland paced in the main room, desperate to be with her but shooed away by Dr. Harrison, who said firmly that fathers had no place in the birthing room. He could hear Olivia crying out occasionally and had to grip the back of a chair to keep from bursting through the door. Miguel and Tomas, who had come to the house when they heard the news, sat with him, offering silent support. "Women are strong, boss," Miguel said quietly. "Stronger than us men in this. She will be all right." Finally, as dawn light began to filter through the windows, a new sound joined the mix. The sharp, indignant cry of a newborn baby. Roland was on his feet instantly, staring at the bedroom door with his heart pounding. Dr. Harrison emerged a few minutes later, tired but smiling. "Congratulations, Roland. You have a son." "A son," Roland repeated dumbly. "And Olivia is tired but well. The birth was not easy, but she came through it beautifully. You can see them now." Roland did not remember crossing the room, but suddenly he was in the bedroom, taking in the scene. Dorothy sat in a chair by the window, her face exhausted but joyful. Olivia lay in the bed, her hair damp with sweat, her face pale, but her eyes were bright as she looked down at the bundle in her arms. "Roland," she said softly, "come meet your son." He approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the tiny face peeking out from the blanket. The baby had stopped crying and was blinking up at them with unfocused eyes. He had a shock of dark hair and features that were still too new to identify, but Roland thought he could see Olivia in the shape of his mouth, himself in the set of his brow. "He is perfect," Roland breathed. "Olivia, he is absolutely perfect. Do you want to hold him?" she asked. Roland nodded, unable to speak, and carefully took the baby into his arms. The weight was almost nothing, but it felt like holding the entire world. His son. His and Olivia's child. He bent his head and pressed a gentle kiss to the downy hair. "We should name him," Olivia said. "What do you think of Robert, after my father?" Roland looked up at her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Robert Wells. I think it is perfect." They spent the rest of that day in a haze of exhausted joy, taking turns holding the baby, marveling at his tiny fingers and toes, his perfect features. Dr. Harrison checked on them once more before leaving, giving Olivia instructions for recovery and infant care. Dorothy prepared simple meals and kept the house running, giving the new parents time to bond with their son. As evening fell and the house grew quiet, Roland sat in the chair beside the bed holding Robert while Olivia dozed. He looked at his wife, at his son, at the life they had built together, and felt gratitude so profound it was almost painful. Less than a year ago, he had been alone in this house, wondering if anyone would ever answer his advertisement for a mail-order bride. Now he had a family, real and complete, and he loved them with a fierce, protective intensity that sometimes took his breath away. "Thank you," he whispered, though he was not sure if he was speaking to Olivia, to God, or to whatever force had brought them together. "Thank you for this." The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and constant feedings, of learning the rhythms of an infant's needs. Robert proved to be a generally content baby, but when he cried, he did so with impressive volume. Olivia recovered well from the birth, regaining her strength steadily. Roland helped whenever he could, walking the floor with Robert in the middle of the night, changing soiled cloths without complaint, bringing Olivia water and food while she nursed. Dorothy was in her element, her years of mothering experience proving invaluable. She seemed to know instinctively what the baby needed, could soothe him when both Olivia and Roland were at their wits' end. She sang old lullabies in a voice that was thin but sweet, and Robert would calm almost instantly. "You are a miracle worker, Mama," Olivia said one afternoon, watching her mother rock the fussy baby to sleep. "Just practice, my dear," Dorothy said with a smile. "You will learn all these tricks yourself soon enough." As spring deepened into summer, life settled into a new rhythm. Roland returned to the full demands of ranch work, though he made sure to spend time each day with his son. Olivia managed the household with increasing confidence, balancing the baby's needs with everything else. Miguel and Tomas were besotted with the baby, taking turns holding him when they came in for meals, their rough hands surprisingly gentle. Maria Sanchez visited often, bringing food and advice and more knitted items than one baby could possibly use. Other families from the area came to call, congratulating the new parents and welcoming Robert into the community. The baby was blessed by the padre in a simple ceremony that brought tears to Olivia's eyes. One evening in late June, when Robert was about 2 months old, Olivia and Roland sat on the porch after putting the baby to bed. The air was warm and fragrant with the scent of the flowering plants Olivia had coaxed into bloom around the house. Dorothy had retired early, claiming exhaustion, though Olivia suspected she was simply giving them privacy. "You ever think about that day at the depot?" Roland asked, his arm around Olivia's shoulders. "When you first arrived?" "All the time," Olivia admitted. "I was so nervous, so uncertain. I did not know what to expect." "I was terrified," Roland confessed, "afraid you would take one look at me and this place and want to leave immediately." She turned to look at him in surprise. "You were terrified? You seemed so calm, so confident." "I was good at hiding it." He pulled her closer. "Olivia, I need you to know something. When I said my house had room for love, I meant it. But I had no idea how much love. I thought maybe we would build a comfortable partnership, mutual respect, maybe affection. I never imagined I could feel this way about anyone. You and Robert, you are everything to me." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "I know exactly what you mean. I came here hoping for security, for a safe place for Mama and me. I found that, but I also found love. Real, deep love. The kind my parents had, the kind I thought I might never have." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Do you think your father would approve?" Roland asked quietly. "Mama says he would have liked you very much," Olivia said. "And I think she is right. You are the kind of man he was, Roland. Kind and strong and decent. He would be happy knowing we found each other. I wish I could have known him. Me too." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "But he lives on in Robert and in me, and in the family we are building." Summer passed in golden heat and contented routine. Robert grew rapidly, becoming more alert and interactive. His smiles were like sunshine, and his laughter, when they finally coaxed it out of him, was pure joy. Olivia chronicled every milestone in a journal Roland had given her, wanting to remember every precious moment. Dorothy's health remained stable through the summer, but began to decline as autumn approached. The cough that had been mild returned with more force, and she tired more easily. Dr. Harrison examined her and spoke to Olivia and Roland privately. "The consumption is progressing," he said gently. "I am sorry. I cannot say how long, but it is moving faster now." Olivia nodded, trying to keep her composure. She had known this was coming, had been preparing for it since her father's death, but the reality still hit hard. "Does she know?" "She knows," the doctor said. "We spoke about it." "She is at peace, Olivia. She has seen you settled, happy, has met her grandson. She said that was all she needed." That evening, Olivia sat with her mother in her room, holding her hand. "Mama," she said softly, "Dr. Harrison told me." "I know, dear." Dorothy's voice was thin but calm. "It is all right. I have lived a good life, and the last year has been particularly blessed." "I am not ready to lose you," Olivia said, tears streaming down her face. "We are never ready," Dorothy said gently. "But Olivia, look at what you have. A wonderful husband who loves you, a beautiful son, a home and community. You do not need me anymore, not really." "I will always need you." "Then I will be here," Dorothy said, touching Olivia's heart. "Always here, just as your father is still with you." Dorothy lasted through the autumn, growing weaker but maintaining her spirits. She spent her days holding Robert, singing to him, telling him stories about his grandfather and about Olivia as a child. Roland treated her with unfailing gentleness, carrying her when she could no longer walk, sitting with her when Olivia needed to rest. She passed peacefully one night in early November, slipping away in her sleep. Olivia found her in the morning, looking peaceful and younger somehow, as though death had smoothed away the lines of pain and age. She sat beside the bed for a long time, holding her mother's cold hand, crying silently. Roland found her there and pulled her into his arms, letting her grieve. They buried Dorothy in the small cemetery outside Las Lunas, beside the church. The whole community turned out for the funeral, these people who had come to care for the older woman in the year she had lived among them. The padre spoke beautiful words about her strength and grace, and Maria Sanchez wept openly. Afterward, back at the ranch, Olivia felt lost. The house seemed too quiet without her mother's presence, without the sound of her voice or her gentle humming. Roland gave her space when she needed it, comfort when she asked for it, never pushing but always present. "I miss her," Olivia said one evening, weeks after the funeral. They were in bed, and she was curled against Roland's side while Robert slept in his cradle nearby. "Every day I think of something I want to tell her, and then I remember I cannot." "That is grief," Roland said gently. "It eases with time, but it never fully goes away. You will carry her with you always, and that is good. That is how it should be." "How did you get so wise?" she asked, managing a small smile. "Hard experience," he said. "I lost my parents years ago. I know what it is like." She had known that, of course, but hearing him speak of it reminded her that he understood her pain from lived experience. "Thank you," she said, "for being here, for understanding." "Always," he promised. Winter came again, and with it a quiet healing. Olivia found solace in routine, in caring for Robert and managing the household, in the steady presence of Roland beside her. She took over the embroidery project her mother had been working on, a sampler with their family name, and finished it with aching care. It now hung on the wall in the main room, a testament to continuity and love. Robert celebrated his first birthday in the spring with a gathering of friends and neighbors. He had learned to walk early and toddled around the yard with determined steps, frequently falling on his well-padded bottom and getting right back up. His personality was emerging, curious and cheerful, with his father's stubbornness and his mother's quick mind. "He is going to be a handful," Maria predicted, watching the boy investigate everything within reach. "He already is," Olivia said fondly. Life continued to flow forward, seasons changing and years passing. When Robert was 2, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was different from the first, harder on her body, but she was experienced now and knew what to expect. Roland was even more protective than before, driving her to distraction with his hovering. Their second child, a daughter they named Ruth Dorothy after both grandmothers, was born in the early spring of Robert's 3rd year. The birth was faster and easier than Robert's had been, and Ruth emerged screaming her indignation at the world. She had Olivia's auburn hair and Roland's whiskey-colored eyes, and she was fierce from the moment she drew breath. "She is going to keep us on our toes," Dr. Harrison predicted, handing the cleaned and swaddled baby to Olivia. He was right. Ruth proved to be more demanding than Robert had been, opinionated and vocal about her needs. But she was also joyful, her smiles like sunshine, her laughter infectious. Robert was initially suspicious of this noisy intruder, but quickly became protective, bringing her toys and patting her head with careful gentleness. The ranch continued to prosper under Roland's management. He hired an additional hand as the workload grew, a young man named Jesse who was eager to learn. Miguel and Tomas became almost like uncles to the children, teaching Robert to ride before he was 4 and telling him stories of ranch life. Olivia had never imagined she could be so content. The hard years after her father's death seemed like a distant memory, someone else's life. Here, in this sun-baked land that she had initially found so strange, she had found home. She had found love, family, purpose. The house that Roland had said had room for love had proven capacious indeed, holding all the joy and sorrow, the growth and change, the daily mundane and the precious extraordinary that made up a life well lived. One evening when Robert was 5 and Ruth was 2, Olivia stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Roland came to stand beside her, his arm settling around her waist in the familiar, comfortable gesture. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how different my life is from what I expected," she said. "When I boarded that stagecoach in Pennsylvania, I was so afraid. I thought I was trading one hardship for another, security bought at the cost of happiness. And now I know how wrong I was." She turned to face him fully. "Roland, you gave me everything. Not just a home and security, but love. Real, deep, lasting love. You took in my mother without hesitation. You have given me these beautiful children. You have built this life with me. I could not have imagined feeling this blessed." His eyes softened and he cupped her face gently. "Olivia, I am the one who was blessed. You came into my life and filled all the empty spaces I did not even know were there. You made this house a home. You gave me children to love and raise. You are my partner in every way that matters." He paused, then added with a slight smile, "And you make better stew than I ever could." She laughed as he had intended and kissed him. After all these years, the feeling of his lips on hers still sent warmth through her entire body. "I love you, Roland Wells. I love you too, Olivia Wells." From inside the house came the sound of Ruth crying and Robert trying to soothe her with off-key singing. They looked at each other and laughed. "Duty calls," Roland said. "It does," Olivia agreed. They went inside together to tend to their children, to the life they had built, to the love that filled every corner of their home. Outside, the sun finished setting over the New Mexico landscape, painting everything in gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new ordinary moments that made up the extraordinary gift of family. But tonight, they were all together under one roof, safe and loved and home. The years continued to flow like water over stone, shaping their family and their lives with gentle persistence. When Robert turned 7, Roland began teaching him the more serious aspects of ranch work, showing him how to tend cattle, how to read the land and the weather. The boy took to it naturally, showing the same instinct for the work that his father possessed. Ruth, at 4 years old, was already demonstrating that she would not be left behind in anything her brother did. She insisted on learning to ride, on helping with chores, on being included in everything. Olivia watched her daughter with a mix of exasperation and pride, seeing her own stubborn determination reflected back at her. "She reminds me of you," Roland observed one afternoon, watching Ruth attempt to carry a bucket of water that was far too heavy for her small frame. "Is that a compliment or a warning?" Olivia asked with amusement. "Both," he admitted, then went to help his daughter before she spilled water all over herself. Olivia had found her own role in the community beyond just being Roland's wife and her children's mother. She organized gatherings for the women in the area, sharing skills and supporting each other through the challenges of frontier life. She taught children to read at the church when the circuit teacher could not make it to Las Lunas. She tended the sick when Dr. Harrison needed help. One spring evening, when the children were finally asleep after their usual resistance to bedtime, Olivia and Roland sat together on the porch as had become their habit. The stars were brilliant overhead, and the air smelled of sage and the flowers in Olivia's garden. "Do you ever miss Pennsylvania?" Roland asked. Olivia considered the question seriously. "I miss the green sometimes," she admitted. "The forests and the rain, but no, I do not miss it. Everything that matters to me is here. No regrets about answering my advertisement." She turned to look at him, seeing the silver beginning to thread through his dark hair, the lines that years of sun and hard work had etched around his eyes. She thought about the frightened young woman who had stepped off that stagecoach, about her mother's presence in those first precious months, about the children asleep inside, about the life they had built together stone by careful stone. "Not a single one," she said firmly. "You said your house had room for love, Roland. You were right. It had room for so much love, more than I ever dreamed possible." He pulled her close and kissed her temple. "It still does," he said quietly. "Room for whatever comes next, and there was more to come." 2 years later, when Robert was 9 and Ruth was 6, Olivia gave birth to twin boys, Nathaniel and Noah. The pregnancy had been difficult, and the birth even more so, but both babies were healthy and strong. Dr. Harrison declared it a miracle that all three had come through so well. "No more," Olivia told Roland firmly when she had recovered enough to think straight. "4 children is plenty." "Agreed," Roland said fervently, still pale from the terror of nearly losing her during the delivery. But the twins brought fresh joy and chaos to the household. Robert and Ruth adapted to their roles as older siblings with varying degrees of grace. Robert becoming even more responsible. Ruth alternating between doting on the babies and resenting the attention they required. The house, which had seemed so large when Olivia first arrived, now felt perfectly sized, every room occupied, every corner holding some evidence of child life. Toys scattered across floors, small clothes drying on lines, the constant noise of children playing and arguing and laughing. Miguel and Tomas, both older now and moving more slowly, declared themselves honorary grandfathers and spoiled all 4 children shamelessly. Jesse, who had courted and married a young woman from town, built his own house on the edge of the property and started his own family. The ranch that had once been Roland's solitary domain had become a community, interconnected lives supporting and enriching each other. When the twins were 3 years old, Las Lunas got a proper school, and Olivia enrolled Robert and Ruth with a mix of pride and melancholy. Her babies were growing up, becoming independent people with their own thoughts and dreams. Roland, seeing her tears the first day of school, pulled her close and reminded her that this was what they wanted, to raise children who could make their own way in the world. "I know," she said. "But they are growing up so fast." "They are," he agreed, "but we still have them for many years yet, and we have each other." That remained the constant truth at the center of their lives. Through all the changes and challenges, through children growing and the ranch expanding, through good years and lean ones, through illness and health, Roland and Olivia remained solid together. Their love had matured from the tentative beginning into something deep and unshakable, tested by time and found true. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Roland arranged for Maria Sanchez to watch the children overnight and took Olivia into town for dinner at the hotel restaurant. It was a rare luxury, being alone together, and they savored every moment. Over a meal far fancier than their usual fare, they talked about the past decade, about how far they had come. "You remember writing to answer my advertisement?" Roland asked, reaching across the table to take her hand. "I remember being desperate," Olivia said honestly. "I remember thinking I had no other choice, that I was doing what I had to do to survive. And now I know that it was not just survival, it was the best decision I ever made." She squeezed his hand. "I would choose you again, Roland, every single time." "As I would choose you," he said quietly. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia. You and those 4 wild children of ours." They laughed together, and it felt like coming home, this easy joy they had built together. The children continued to grow, Robert becoming a young man who worked beside his father with increasing skill. Ruth developing into a fierce, bright girl who declared she was going to be a teacher someday. The twins remaining inseparable and getting into the kind of mischief that only twins could devise. When Robert turned 16, Roland sat him down for a serious conversation about his future. "This ranch will be yours someday," he told his son. "Yours and your siblings. But I want you to choose it because you want it, not because you think you have to." Robert looked surprised. "I do want it," he said. "I cannot imagine doing anything else. This is home, Dad. This is where I belong." The pride Roland felt was almost painful in its intensity. "All right then," he said. "Then I will start teaching you the business side, the accounts and contracts. You need to know all of it." Ruth, when given the same conversation 2 years later, had different ideas. "I want to be a teacher," she said firmly. "Like Mama does at the church, but as a real job. Can I go to normal school?" Olivia and Roland discussed it and agreed, though it would mean Ruth leaving home for training. Their daughter's ambition and intelligence deserved support, even if it took her away from the ranch. The twins, still young, had not yet declared their intentions, but they seemed content with ranch life, following their older brother around and learning from him. Years flowed into decades. Roland's dark hair turned silver, and Olivia's auburn faded to softer shades threaded with white. Lines deepened on both their faces, maps of lives fully lived. Their children grew into adults, making their own choices and building their own lives. Robert married a young woman from Santa Fe and brought her home to the ranch, building a house nearby. Ruth finished her training and took a teaching position in Albuquerque, visiting when she could and writing long letters in between. The twins, Nathaniel and Noah, proved to have a gift for horse breeding and began developing that side of the ranch business. Grandchildren arrived, one by one, and Olivia found herself in the role her mother had filled, the matriarch watching a new generation grow. She held each baby with the same wonder she had felt holding her own children, seeing the continuation of family, the future stretching ahead. On a warm summer evening when they were both well into their 60s, Olivia and Roland sat on the porch as they had done countless times over the decades. The house behind them was full of family, 3 generations gathered for Sunday dinner, the noise of conversation and laughter spilling out into the evening air. "We did well," Roland said quietly, looking out over the ranch that had been his life's work. "We did," Olivia agreed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible." He turned to look at her, this woman who had stepped off a stagecoach so many years ago, uncertain and afraid, and had become the center of his entire world. "Do you know what I think about sometimes?" he asked. "What?" "About that moment at the depot when I first saw you. You looked so worried, so unsure, and your mother was with you, and I remember thinking that I could not turn you away, even though taking in 2 women instead of 1 was not what I had planned. I remember saying my house had room for love." "I remember that too," Olivia said softly. "Those words gave me hope. They made me think maybe everything would be all right." "I had no idea how true they would prove to be," Roland continued. "This house, this life, has held more love than I could have imagined. Your mother, God rest her, our children, our grandchildren, you and me, all of it, all of them, all this love." Tears slipped down Olivia's cheeks. "It has been a good life, Roland, the very best life." He reached over and took her hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of decades of practice. "It is not over yet," he pointed out. "We have more years ahead, more grandchildren to spoil, more sunsets to watch together. Promise?" She asked, knowing that no one could truly make such a promise, but needing to hear it anyway. "I promise to love you every day we have left," he said, "however many that might be, and to be grateful for every single one of them." From inside the house, one of their grandchildren called for them, and they rose together, still holding hands, and went to join their family. The evening stretched ahead, full of the ordinary precious moments that made up a life. Dinner and dishes, stories and laughter, children playing in the yard while the adults talked, the slow settling of night over the land. Later, much later, when everyone had gone home or to bed, Olivia and Roland lay together in the darkness of their room. She rested her head on his shoulder, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and thought about all the years behind them and whatever years still lay ahead. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. For giving me a home, a family, a life beyond anything I dreamed possible." "Thank you," he whispered back, "for being brave enough to get on that stagecoach, for bringing your mother and trusting me to care for you both, for building this life with me, for loving me." "Always," she promised, "always and forever." They fell asleep like that, wrapped together, and dreamed of the future that their children and grandchildren would build, the legacy of love that would continue long after they were gone. The seasons turned and the years passed, and their love remained constant, the foundation upon which everything else was built. Roland and Olivia Wells lived long, full lives, seeing their children settled and happy, watching grandchildren grow and great-grandchildren arrive. They worked side by side until age finally slowed them, and then they rocked on their porch and watched the life they had built continue around them. When Roland finally passed peacefully at the age of 82, Olivia grieved deeply, but without regret. They had been given decades together, far more than many couples received. She lived another 3 years, cared for lovingly by her children and surrounded by family until the end. They were buried side by side in the Las Lunas cemetery, near the church where they had married so many years before. The entire community turned out for the funerals, testifying to the lives they had lived and the love they had shared. The ranch continued on, passed to Robert and his siblings as Roland had always intended. The house that had room for love remained full, new generations making it their home, adding their own stories to the foundation that Roland and Olivia had built. And sometimes, on warm summer evenings when the light turned golden and the air smelled of sage, family members would gather on that same porch and tell the story of how it all began. Of the mail-order bride who brought her elderly mother, and the cowboy who said his house had room for love. Of the courage it took to begin again in a strange land, and the love that grew from that brave beginning. It was a story worth remembering, worth telling, worth living. A testament to the transformative power of love, to the beauty of family, to the extraordinary richness that could grow from the simplest beginning. It was their legacy, and it endured.